All right. Hey to you all on YouTube. Welcome to another Wednesday night writing workshop. I'm Jeremy Dobert with the Academic Support Center, and today we are talking about body paragraphs. And my really big pitch for what we're looking at with these body paragraph tools, strategies, formulas, is that they're all meant to make it so that writing a paragraph is a little less like trying to constantly have re-navigate in an essay and figure out, wait, what comes next? What do I have to write next? What these do is they make writing a little more like a set of train tracks where you're gonna, okay, this is the next move I have to make, and then this one after that, and this one after that. And somewhat paradoxically, having that kind of structure, knowing what comes next, makes it a whole lot easier to get more of your thoughts down on the page in a way that is fast, in a way that produces stronger, more clear writing, and in a way that ultimately leads to better essays. With that said, we're going to look at a couple models. Here's the first one. This is a pretty foundational body paragraph model. I can tell you this model exactly. This is the model that I used to teach when I would work with students who were writing essays for the SAT, the ACT, the GRE, the whole alphabet soup of standardized test, because it's a great way to get information down on the page really fast. And here's the parts really quick. Topic sentence, so literally here explicitly on the page, this is the main idea that is going to be talked about in this paragraph. Evidence, here's all the supporting information, data, details, evidence that helps hold up this topic. I sometimes think of it like a bridge with these supporting evidence pillars underneath it. And then last, the reasoning, where I literally on the page put down, here's how I think that evidence proves that topic that I mentioned at the beginning. So just kind of a little bit circle. Part of why I would teach this for folks who had timed essays is it's a really great way to maneuver through, especially when you're tired, when you're trying to get the essay put on a page really fast, or even, with that kind of exhaustion after a whole test. If you're ever in a place where you have that kind of curveball of a timed essay on a real test, this is a great model to have in the back of your brain. I'm going to talk now a little about what each of these things are, because we'll see all of them in the different, more sophisticated models as we go. So starting with a topic sentence, I can tell you, and I feel this temptation all the time when I'm writing to kind of just skip over this and jump right into my thoughts, into the good stuff. But I can tell you, if you ever listen to people who make arguments for a living, like say lawyers and politicians love topic sentences. Politicians, the economy is in a good place. The war is justified and necessary. Lawyers, my client couldn't have been identified because the visibility was just terribly awful. The reason why people that make arguments for a living love these topic sentences is they know that if you skip it, if you jump into this stuff, it's a really great way to lose the jury, to lose the audience, and to confuse people. So if you picture a lawyer going right in, really actually picture a lawyer going into the courtroom and skipping the topic and going sentence and going right into the evidence. So it was a Tuesday night and there was clouds in a 36, blah, 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 blah. It's a great way to just have everyone that's listening, the whole jury, start misunderstanding, trying to keep track of everything, forget stuff, make misconnections, and essentially come up with their own like conspiracy theory chart of how everything's connected, like the conspiracy charts you see in movies. And so this topic sentence is essentially like giving at the very beginning, here's the box to put all the evidence in, so I can't get lost, I can't forget stuff and make my misconnections. I know how all the evidence is connected at the very, very beginning. And we'll even look at some tools for setting that up if you ever like. The evidence, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about, but what I really just want to point to right now is that evidence can take on a lot of different forms. So if you're in the sciences, this is where that data goes. So topic sentence, hand washing has been proven effective at preventing germ spread in the hospital setting. Here's where all the data, all the facts, all the details from those studies go. If it's a research report, so that might be something in history. I think even in nursing 1214, there's a report that's about how healthcare affects a particular country. This is where those facts, those details go. So topic sentence for that paper, the Roman Catholicism has a significant impact on healthcare in Italy. Here's where all those details from the reading go. And all that stuff is cited, whether there's data, there's facts, there's details. This is also where if you're writing a literary analysis, so on the other end where you're talking more about analyzing a book, something someone else has read, this is where there's great paraphrases, quotes that really prove your point about what this book is about. That's where all of these go. Last, reasoning. And here's my pitch with this. I want to ask you if this has ever happened to you, where you've gone and seen a movie with some friends and come away with totally different interpretations of what the movie is. It's a really human, really common thing. And the reason I'm talking about it now is no matter how clear-cut you think the evidence is, how transparent, how obvious, as humans, we all start interpreting the evidence in our own way. We interpret the movie in our own way. And so this is a place where I, on purpose, say, here's my interpretation of the movie of that evidence, what I think it's showing, so that all the folks reading the essay, they come away with the same thing that you came away with from that evidence. So we're going to take this model now, and we're going to take it kind of a half step forward and make it a little more collegiate, a little more sophisticated. And we're just actually taking that last part, that reasoning, and developing it a little. Let's start with analysis. For what it's worth, this word analysis, it comes from the Greek and it literally means to break apart. This, as part of the paragraph model, that analysis, I know that this is the thing that when I talk with course instructors, with professors at Aurora University, this is the thing that they're really wanting from the essay and that they are often pushing students to do more of. And so what this is it is not just a summary of what the evidence literally says, not just interpreting here's what the movie of the evidence is saying, but taking this one step forward of here's how each piece of the evidence fits together, breaking apart. Here's why this piece of the evidence is important, what it means. Here's why all this evidence together is important. One way that I found really helpful that one of my professors talked about this was unpacking the evidence in the same way that when you get home from a trip with your suitcase, you take everything out and all this stuff that was packed really tightly in this suitcase, you kind of find its home and slowly it grows into a pile, right? The idea is really piece by piece, taking apart whatever that evidence is, explaining here's what this means, why it's important, and how ultimately it's connecting to those bigger ideas, those bigger topics in the essay. Synthesis, the opposite of analysis. Syn, coming from that same root as like synthetic fibers bringing together multiple fibers. Thesis, that's an argument. And so the synthesis is now that I've broken apart the evidence into smaller pieces, I've unpacked it and shown here's what it means, why it's important. That question why, for what it's worth. If you even imagine in the analysis, like a 2-year-old asking, well, why? That's a pretty darn good way to dig deeper into the analysis. After I've done all that, the synthesis is where I start pulling all those threads back together and say, here's how all of those pieces of evidence, now that I've broken them apart, are connected to each other, to the topic, and then even to the overall big main overarching idea of the essay. We're going to take one step forward and look at a different model. I'm going to do this a little how it was first taught to me, which to paint the scene, it was a autumn day in Galesburg, Illinois, and a course instructor came into the classroom and with a twirl of overcoat said, I'm about to tell you the most important thing you're going to learn in your whole college career. And then he wrote in big block letters on the board, Oprah. So if Oprah's dated, Ellen does something similar, anyone that, the reason I'm talking about these folks is anyone that interviews people on daytime TV, they have a structure to their show, and the structure, it turns out, is a really great body paragraph. If you think about it, these folks at the beginning of their show, whether it's Oprah, Ellen, anyone that you've seen before interviewing people on daytime TV, the first thing they do is introduce the segment of the show. Hey, we talk a lot about bullying on this show, but is it getting worse now that it's moved online? Great. Topic sentence, I know at the very start of the show exactly what it's about, what all the evidence, what all the guests are going to be talking about. But then Oprah does this second thing that's really smart, where she introduces the guest. She gives a little quick kind of synopsis of here's what this person's going to talk about before they start talking. And if you think about it, if you picture if Oprah didn't do this, if Oprah said, we talk a lot about bullying on this show, but is it getting worse now that it's moved online? If some person was just like, yeah, I'm from Harvard and I have studied this, it would feel awkward and bad, right? It's Oprah's show. Oprah directs you to, here's why this person's showing up. Here's why they're talking, instead of that kind of weird surprise of like, why is this person on the show? A really similar thing happens for what it's worth in writing, where that quick introduction of here's my topic, here's a really fast introduction of the evidence of the guest on my paper. It makes it so that we're not jumping right into the evidence and going like, wait, why is this here? Why are we turning to this person, this thing? Why have we kind of left the voice of the person who's writing the essay, which is you? It's your essay, it's your show. What I did here, let's see if we can get it all on one page. Okay, that's good enough. What I did here is I tried to write kind of a moderate impression of like Oprah introducing a topic, introducing a guest, and then I changed almost nothing. I just made it a little less talky, a little more formal, a little more academic sounding. I'm just going to read it so you can see how similar those moves are. So here's a small moderate interpretation of Oprah introducing the segment, the topic. Welcome back. We talked a lot about bullying on the show, how unfortunately common it is, how much it can affect someone, and how long-lasting some of those effects can be. But is it getting worse? I changed almost nothing, and here's it in the paper. To summarize, the research clearly demonstrates that bullying is unfortunately commonplace, and its effects can be deep and long-lasting. Moreover, the prevalence of bullying may be increasing. It's just a little less talky, a little more formal. It's really the same move. Here's Oprah introducing a guest. Today, we have a special guest, Dr. Jones, who says that bullying might actually be getting worse because it's online. Dr. Jones, what do you have to say about the lives of these young people? Here's it in an essay. According to Jones, 2019, that's the citation that we need, the prevalence and degree of bullying actually worsens when bullying itself moves into online spaces. Jones at times paints a particularly bleak picture of young people's experience. It's really kind of that similar. We can steal that move of introducing the guest right after the topic. The other thing that Oprah does is she outros the guest. Again, if you picture, if Oprah didn't do this, if the guest just was talking on Oprah's show, and then when the guest stops talking, it cuts to black or like cuts to commercial, it would feel really bad. And so instead, Oprah outros the guest with something like, thank you so much. That was Dr. Jones, whose new book shows all the ways in which young people really are facing these additional challenges with online bullying on the rise. Again, here's very little changed outroing in a paper. In other words, these findings clearly highlight the variety of ways in which young people face additional challenges when bullying follows them online. I probably could have done even a little more analysis, dug deeper into the synthesis in this last sentence. I bet an AU English professor would have told me to, but you get the idea that introing and outroing of the evidence that we have to cite in that middle, it helps really do two cool things that I'm going to talk about in a moment. Here's a version of it that's a little more organized and outlined. If you've ever had a course instructor say, don't end with a quote, this is why. They want you to do that outroing and that ideally analysis synthesis. Once this feels comfortable-ish, comfortable enough, you can do two really great things. The first one is this. You can make a body paragraph lots of different pieces of evidence from different sources. If you've ever done this before, bringing lots of different sources into one body paragraph, it is really easy for it to start feeling disorganized, chaotic, and for it to even be really hard to write. But if you have that introing and outroing of a guest, introing and outroing of an evidence down, here's what it can look like. And so this is a body paragraph I just kind of put together. It's about Bill Murray because I like Bill Murray. And here's really fast for what it's worth the topic sentence. The topic sentence is essentially Bill Murray is doing goofy stuff out in the real world, not just in movies, but in the real world. So here's the first introing of our first guest. So Bill Murray doing weird stuff out in the real world for fun. For example, Fitzgerald describes a bizarre run-in at a frat house. There's the quote, paraphrase summary of what that author said. Well, Fitzgerald's description, so we're outroing the guest, of a mild-mannered Bill Murray crashing a frat party is pretty hilarious. This certainly isn't an isolated incident for Murray. So I outroed one guest, now I'm going to intro a new guest. Hecht similarly recalls a night in which he was surprised to find Bill Murray pretending to be a bartender. And then there's again the summary, the paraphrase, the quote from our second source. Let's outro Hecht. A pattern quickly emerges, doing a little synthesis in the middle, in both Hecht and Fitzgerald stories. Bill Murray shows up to a place he hasn't exactly been invited to and simply pretends that he's not Bill Murray. Let's introduce our last piece of evidence. Moreover, Scott's article details, you get the idea. That introing and outroing, if you start imagining subtracting these bolded parts, it's really easy for this paragraph to become a mess, really chaotic, disorganized, and again, just hard to write and keep track of, where that Oprah model makes it so it's really clear why each piece of evidence is there, how it's all connected, and makes it even a little easier to set up the end analysis, breaking all of it apart into its pieces, and that end synthesis, bringing it all back together. Here is the second thing you can do with the Oprah model, which is you can talk about one article, one piece of evidence for kind of a while. This is particularly useful in those research reports where you're taking a lot of information from one article and almost kind of saying, here's what this author said, because that's what the assignment asked for, to just do a report of here's what this article says, or here's what all this piece of information is talking about, and here's the parts and pieces of doing that. So one article over a long period of time. Just as before, we got a topic sentence, that interpretation analysis would go here at the end. This one doesn't have a topic sentence, so I'm going to make one up. Critics of smartphones often argue that smartphones are sort of taking away the more human attributes of ourselves. All right, that's good enough. Now we're going to introduce Sherry Turkle really pretty fast. In fact, according to Sherry Turkle, smartphone use technology in young people, I'm giving that quick introduction, almost like a preview to a movie. Here's what Sherry Turkle is going to talk about. Here's the most important part if I'm ever talking about one source over a long period of time throughout an essay, which is these little mini introductions. So I'm going to keep reintroducing Sherry Turkle as well. Turkle continues. However, Turkle ultimately contends, her argument concludes, the reason for each of these things and why they're so important is what we're trying to avoid is this. So if I had a citation right here at the end of this paragraph, technically, only that last sentence is cited. If any of this stuff is talking about stuff I learned, stuff I'm bringing in from research, stuff I read about, I've technically plagiarized. I'm terrifyingly on the wrong line of an academic dishonesty hearing. So right now, only that last sentence is covered, and I've said this is the sentence that I found in research. Here's one way to, if you ever have this problem where it's a whole paragraph of lots of things that need to be cited, here's the two ways to do it. One, you can cite literally every sentence. So if every sentence is from a source, I'm going to cite, this is from Williamson. This is technically not wrong. This is technically okay. In APA, it looks a little ugly, but it's okay. The more sophisticated way to do this, to talk about one source over a long period of time, is with those little reminders, those little reintroductions. Because what those do is they make it so any reasonable person would understand, oh, I'm still talking about the article up here. I'm still talking about the article up here. If I do that, if I give those little reminders so it's absolutely clear, I'm still talking about the same article, it's almost like bookend citing or sandwich citing, where I cite at the very, very beginning when I first mention the author, and then at the very, very end. And so now I'm saying from here to here, this all belongs to this person, and I've made it really, really clear. You can do not just with an author, but also with even something like just referencing a study. And that's, I think, what they did here. So in this one, we cited literally every sentence, and right here, we're not citing the middle sentence because they added this little breadcrumb, this little reintroduction, the study notes, and that means from here to here, I'm okay. I got the bookend citations. I have not technically plagiarized, and I've managed to do a whole lot of information from one source really nicely in a box. I include this because it even can be this subtle. So right here, I'm going to just read this aloud really fast. Literacy consists of both reading and writing. The writing might take the form of marking up a text or making notes about it. If this is something I read about in the research, technically right now, it's not cited. I need that, introduction to make that, to be on the right side of that citing, that plagiarism policy. The other thing that I want to point out with this model, using that Oprah model to talk about one source for a long time, is that if I start subtracting parts, if I subtract the topic sentence and that analysis, synthesis, interpretation of the evidence, I can end up with, maybe you've had this before, a paragraph where it's like literally every sentence has to be cited, every sentence is from a source. If that ever happens to you, where literally every sentence is from a source, the bad news is that it is a problem. The good news is it's an easy fix. It's a structural problem, and all we got to do is add this topic sentence, say, here's what it's about. Here's all this information from the research I've read. And then here's that really quick interpretation of the evidence. We're going to look now at almost like kind of paint by numbers if you ever get stuck in any of those moves, stuck writing the topic sentence, introducing the evidence, analyzing, synthesizing, that kind of thing. If you ever are struggling with, let's say, getting that topic sentence, introducing the evidence, here are some almost like paint by numbers ways to start getting ideas on a page and to really get unstuck. For each of these, I've also included like a little exercise if you want to try it out to get it feel a little more familiar. If you get really stuck in any of this or ever stuck writing an essay, I really just want to pitch, set up an appointment with the Academic Support Center. We'd love to work with you exactly on getting an essay that's feeling stuck, unstuck. That said, let's start. So paint by numbers, getting unstuck if you're struggling with a topic sentence. This is one of my favorite things to do with students, which is if ever it's a trouble getting the topic sentence down on the page, to literally write out in this paragraph, I'm going to talk about how. And so I did this once with a student, and what we really came up with was in this paragraph, I'm going to talk about how plastic straws can cause significant damage to the environment. And sure enough, that's a pretty good starting topic sentence. Plastic straws can cause significant damage to the environment. If you're ever doing this at home, the part that does a magic trick, the part you have to remember is that word how. That's what kind of tricks the brain into accidentally writing a topic sentence or something that's pretty close to the beginning of a topic sentence. If you fill in that blank, you might right off the bat have a great, perfect topic sentence, or you might have something that needs a little work, like, I don't know, plastic straws are bad. That could become a little more specific, add a little more detail. What am I really going to talk about in this paragraph? But there's a way to get unstuck, get a pretty good working first topic sentence on the page. Same thing now for introducing evidence. We talked about this a bit, that if you are actively imagining, okay, how would I introduce this piece of evidence? If it were sort of a guest on the show of my essay, or even I think this sometimes works, it's a little more concrete, a little more relatable. If I were introducing this book, this thing that I read, to a friend who has not read it, what's the one sentence that would be really helpful for them to know before they looked at this thing that I'm showing them, this piece of evidence from this book? If that doesn't work, there's always the tried and true. The author argues that blank. And again, in one sentence, we're almost trying to give a really quick sneak preview. Here's what we're going to see in the evidence. Here's what this guest is going to be talking about. I don't know that I've done an example yet. So here's even kind of one example of what that can look like, that introducing in that kind of sneak preview of a sentence. Sherry Turkle's essay, How Computers Change the Way We Think, explores the ways in which digital technology can leave us isolated. For example, Turkle argues, so it's that little sneak preview where now I have a better understanding of why we're looking to Sherry Turkle and the bigger ideas of the essay here. Last, and this is, I think, again, one of my favorite kind of paint by numbers, fill in the blank to get unstuck, which is if you're ever having trouble with that, interpreting that evidence, whether it's literally saying, here's what the evidence is saying, analyzing the evidence, synthesizing it. These are a few quick fill in the blanks that can start moving a brain towards exactly those things. In other words, I'll give a pretty good summary. This means, this shows, this all shows, and then it's filling in that blank. And so even, let me try if I can do a couple. So that hand washing one, hand washing in the hospital setting has been shown to significantly decrease germ spread. The really pro move, if you can, so even that's okay. This shows that blank. The really pro move is, can you then take out the this or maybe even the shows? So hand washing in a hospital setting has been shown to significantly decrease germ spread. Can I even take out that this, like this show? What shows? Is it data? Is it studies? Like the studies show that the data paints a clear picture that hand washing in the hospital setting decreases germ spread. If I take that more literary example, so let's say my topic sentence or my this shows was topic sentence in the book The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven by Sherman Alexie. The narrator, Junior, experiences this incredible amount of discrimination that actually changes how he thinks about himself. Here's all the evidence, the passage, the good quotes, examples from the book. This all shows, I'm just literally taking this all shows that that Junior is thinking about himself in a different way after he experiences discrimination. Well, again, what's that this? Is it, the way that people are talking about him? Is it the way that his inner monologue works? I'll plug that in. Junior's inner monologue after he's experienced this discrimination demonstrates that bullying has had a clear effect on him. I'm getting a little abstract here, but what I really want to push to is these are great ways to get unstuck with some of that analysis, that interpretation of the evidence. And if you can take out that this and put in something more specific, here's again a little mini thesaurus for a whole lot of close synonyms to that word shows. Those two moves can even strengthen that synthesis, that analysis. The last thing I would again push here is that asking that why question. Really like how young folks, young children will just ask that question why over and over again. If you're looking to push that analysis deeper, if that's the note you're getting from the course instructor, that's the way to do it. So I'm going to try again a little on the fly. So in Lone Ranger and Talk to Fist Fight in Heaven, Junior's experiencing discrimination, our interpretation is all of these scenes of bullying show that Junior is thinking about himself in a different way. He's reevaluating his identity. Okay, why? How do I know that? How do I know that that's true? Why do I think that's true? Well, in fact, after the most severe moment of bullying, we can see that that question of why can sometimes just naturally kind of bubble sentences out of sentences in that analysis. And again, if this is ever a place that feels like the struggle in an essay, trying to get more of that analysis moving, so that moving it into deeper waters, would be a great reason to set up an appointment with an academic support center. So this is I'm including it here. This is literally using that kind of paint by numbers one by one. A student and I did this together, and we were able to kind of come up with a pretty good paragraph. I'm going to leave this just on the page for now. What I want you to see is those paint by numbers can even kind of put together something that looks about as cohesive as this. The last thing that we're going to look to is the toughest of these body paragraph models. It's also the most sophisticated and the one that's kind of the coolest. But what I want to say at the beginning is if the body paragraph we look at in a moment feels murky, difficult, tough, like it's not really making sense, that's okay. That Oprah model, that'll really do its job, and that'll get a lot of information organized in just a tried and true way. If that ever is feeling tough, or you're really under time, like let's say it's on a test or it's a discussion post that needs to be in like in 3 minutes, that first model we look to, that's a pretty good way to get stuff on the page really fast. So what we're looking at now is taking all those models to kind of the last best step, the most sophisticated, the coolest of them. And what we're really doing is just adding two things, one at the very beginning and one at the very end. So at the very, very beginning, what I'm doing differently is I'm not just introducing the topic, I'm also with a really quick transition, like we looked at and talked about before, the quick transition, I'm showing how this new topic is connected to the last thing I was talking about. So even at, let's say, that Bill Murray paragraph that I talked about, it's the last, so this paragraph, its main idea is Bill Murray's doing weird stuff, funny things out in the real world. Let's say my last paragraph was about how, all his movies are, really particular and funny in their own unique way. So I'm going to try to connect those things at the very beginning of this new paragraph. Well, Bill Murray's totally unique idiosyncratic style made him famous in the films he starred in. After at some point in his career, Bill Murray moved that same sensibility out to the real world. And so I'm trying to take that last thing I was talking about and show how this new topic is connected to that last thing. The other thing we're adding in this model, so at the very beginning, that transition, and at the very end, I'm adding this one extra layer of synthesis where I'm not just saying, here's how all the evidence that I've broken apart is connected to each other. Here's how it's connected to the topic, but I'm taking one really big step out and saying, here now is how this whole paragraph, how it connects back to the main thesis, the main argument, how the main argument has changed, developed, or been strengthened by how this whole paragraph is, essentially what it's added to. And so this is visually if what I was just talking about feels abstract or murky, this is visually a pretty good representation, a classic representation of an essay, starting with an upside down pyramid as the introduction because it starts general and then narrows the topic a little, narrows it a little more to its narrowest point, which is usually the argument. The argument zoop, jumps us right into the essay. And here's, I don't know, topic 1, 2, 3. Here's that evidence, that interpretation, analysis. What this last move is doing is pulling all the way back the main thesis. And what that does, if I do both those moves at the same time, where the last thing in a paragraph is saying, here's how it's connected back to the overall main point of the essay, here's how the argument's been strengthened, taken a turn, developed in some way, then when I make the new transition, I'm constantly coming back to that main point, that main argument, and showing how it's developing across the page of an essay. So again, if you think of it kind of starting big, here's how this topic is connected to the main argument. Here's the evidence. I'm breaking apart the evidence. I'm showing how the evidence is connected. Now that I've broken it apart, I'm showing how the evidence is connected to the topic. I'm showing how this whole topic is connected back to the whole of the essay. That's really the idea of this model. It is the best of the models I got, the most sophisticated, and it really does do the most work, especially if you get a lot of complicated ideas that are talking to each other. So let's see, I did it right here. So the last paragraph was talking about Bill Murray's movies. Here's what one of those transitions might look like. Bill Murray, became famous for his idiosyncratic deadpan comedy on screen, calling back to the last topic. In recent years, he's been creating moments, comedic moments in the real world. Here's the new topic. Here's again all those 4 examples. We could intro and outro them so we can use a lot of evidence from a lot of different sources. Here's a not bad, it's okay, analysis, synthesis of it all. And here's me doing my best to bring it all back to a pretend thesis. I'll read this out loud. Murray's antics, in addition to his culture-defining films, have firmly established him as something of an American legend. So I guess that's what my whole essay is about, just why I like Bill Murray or think he's important. But so what we're looking at now in the presentation, and again, I will remember to put this in the chat at the end. This is a way to outline an essay based on some of the stuff we were talking about. This is, for what it's worth, how I used to outline my essays at college and graduate school. You don't have to read this or have any of it make sense. What this is, what you're looking at, is taking all of the pieces of evidence that I thought I was going to use in this essay. I made this together with a student. So it's taking all the pieces of evidence that I think I'm going to be using in the essay and literally just cut and pasting and moving them in generally the order that I think they're going to show up in the essay. Again, whether here it's quotes from different articles, different books, whether it's data, whether it's just literally the facts for a research report. If I start moving the evidence, just the evidence, in basically the order I think it's going to show up in the essay, what it does is 2 things. One, just by doing that, by moving the evidence around and being like, wait, actually, I think it makes more sense for this quote to go here, and then I'll follow with this quote and give this statistic. Just doing that moving around is a great way to really naturally brainstorm and kind of figure out the big movements of an essay and organize it in a way that really naturally makes sense. The second thing that this can do, starting by just organizing where generally the evidence more or less is going to show up, it's going to show up, is it makes it so that instead of starting with the terrifying great blank white page of a Word doc, you start with all this stuff on the page. It literally even kind of looks like a set of train tracks. And now I know, okay, if this is my first piece of evidence, how do I introduce it? What's the big topic that this evidence fits to? How can I start close reading, start interpreting, analyzing, synthesizing this evidence? It makes it so that those moves are even more kind of ready to come on the page. It's I really like having that organization, that set of train tracks, so that you end up getting to think more about, what do I think about this topic? What do I think about this evidence? How do I see it connected all together, instead of having to constantly read it? I think, that's about the end of the show. There's topic 1, model 1, model 2, model 1.5 is in there, and then model 3. So you all on YouTube, again, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to check out the other videos. But thank you so much. Bye.